Alright, so this conversation, and well, this subject, I mean, is actually brought on by Ziploc Gore's video he did yesterday. I want to say he did this video yesterday, but this video basically is going to talk about realism versus escapism. And what I mean by that is, realism stuff, like realism in comics versus escapism in comics, and which do people prefer? Now, me personally, I prefer escapism. The farther you go, the better it is for me. Now, on the other hand, I do like some realism stuff, like The Dark Knight, and some of the like Superman Earth 1. But I'll get into that in a minute. But I'm more of a fan of escapism. Like the further you go, the better. Like, let's take for instance a lot of anime. Like, anime is just pure escapism. Like, no matter how you beat around the bush, there is something, something supernatural, something paranormal, or something just, holy shit, where did that come from kind of moments. There are just a lot of, holy shit moments in anime that you're like, okay, this is cool. The other thing is that, I totally lost my place, I'm sorry. But yeah. Now, for me, escapism is very cool, because when I want to read a comic, I don't want to be bothered by, oil, economy, politics. I don't want to be bothered by that. I get enough of that in the real world. When I want escapism, that's why I think I like Brave and the Bold so much, because it is just so... It really shows a lot of Golden Age DC stuff off. Well, granted, it does show a lot of favoritism to Batman, but it really does show a lot of, love for, how crazy and how not serious the DC universe can take itself. I mean, there are some episodes that are just so freaking out there. Like, let's take, for instance, an episode where Batman and Aquaman went to, to the planet Ron to help Adam Strange. Did anyone expect that? Anyone? But yeah. Now realism, I do like some realism stuff. Like, let's say, Dark Knight. The Dark Knight movie is, everyone's expectation. On the other hand, it really kind of ruined it for a lot of comic book movies, is because, now everything has to be dark and realistic. I'm like, it doesn't. Everything doesn't have to be Batman. No, nothing really has to be Nolanized. Everything doesn't have to be Nolanized, It does. Now, granted, I do love the Dark Knight movie. I think it's a very good movie, but I don't think it should be the standpoint for every comic book movie. You don't have to do that, This is why I think I'm going to enjoy Thor and Green Lantern a lot, because that's just pure escapism right there. The Norse god of thunder fighting a giant armor, and there's this mystical world out there. That's true escapism right there. And we have got Green Lantern, who's basically an Air Force pilot who gets a ring and fights aliens. Again, escapism, right there. That's another reason why I always liked, I've recently, remember why I like Superman video? I think this is why I like Superman more than Batman, because Superman is like a good mixture of realism and escapism, in my opinion. And yeah, I know, Green Lantern, Hal Jordan's my favorite DC superhero, because a lot of the stuff also is that you have a mixture... Actually, no, the recent stuff that Jeff Johns has done is like a lot of escapism. So you gotta praise Jeff Johns. I praise Jeff... I thank Jeff Johns for that, the more stuff that Hal Jordan's doing is a lot of escapism stuff. Now, with realism, getting on Superman, especially in Superman Earth 1, Superman is a good mixture, in my opinion, of realism and escapism. Why I say that is because with realism, Superman can, even though he's alien and he has all these great powers, is that he's a very human character deep down. He cares for people. Where he could have been like, screw this, I'm taking over the planet, or, he feels he has very human needs. Like, he loves Lois, he cares about, the people around him. He gets mentally hurt when, Like, let's take, for instance, when Darkseid corrupted Kara Zor-El, Supergirl. That was a very human moment for him because, he had to fight his only cousin. So you have to take that in mind. And, the anger that he felt, another realism moment for him was like when Brainiac killed, Jonathan Kent. He felt a lot of anger and wanted nothing more than to find Brainiac and beat him to death. So, keep that in mind. Now, getting on to the subject of Superman Earth 1, this is a really good, in my opinion, one of the reasons why I like Superman Earth 1 is because it's a really good blend of realism and escapism, and it did have some moments of Smallville, but for the most part, it didn't feel like just a Smallville ripoff. Now, the book itself is just a good mixture of realism and escapism, but at the end, it was like total escapism right here. Especially that fight with the villain Tyrell. I thought that was very good. But yeah, this is why. Yeah, that's why I like Superman. I think I like Superman more than Batman. But yeah, that's another good reason is like escapism is a good way. Like I said in comics, is a good way to just get away from everything. For about 22 to 30 pages or so, whatever you're reading, like graphic novel, but let's just, for the sake of argument, take a single issue comic. For about 22 pages or more, depending on what issue you're reading, like a giant-sized whatever, you're totally engrossed in that world. Well, for me at least, I'm totally engrossed in that world. Nothing. It's like I'm in that comic book universe when I'm reading the book. It's like there is nothing around me but these pages. That's escapism right there. And I don't really need it when comic books, especially Marvel's been pulling this shit a lot, especially with Fear Itself. And as much as I keep saying I'm interested in this, but I feel like I'd really more prefer these days escapism now because. Bin Laden's dead. That's good, but for the most part, it's still kind of bad out. It's still really bad out there, and I really don't need to be reminded. Hey, you should fear everything. So maybe I'm not as hyped as I was for Fear Itself before, but But I'll still take I'll still give it a chance to read it. I haven't been able to even read issue 1 yet, so who knows. But for the most part, it really does. For the most part, it really does come down to well, just for me at least, that it comes down to what I want to do, and what it basically comics books for me should be away from the world. It should be in its own universe. Now, granted, I do like it sometimes when they play at real world problems, but it shouldn't be all the time. And it shouldn't really be depressing. Now, I really do like comic books that, especially that play up on something incredibly crazy, especially in the DC universe, because, DC has been time and time again, it doesn't take itself seriously. This is why I think DC is really, rocking against Marvel, is that they're playing around with, stuff that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but only in DC comic book wise. And DC, in my opinion, is more escapism, whereas Marvel's more realism. And I think I'm becoming, the more I read DC comics and the more I read Marvel comics and the less hype I'm getting for Marvel stuff, the more I'm getting hype for DC stuff. So I started out as a Marvel fan, but in the recent years I'm becoming more, past year or so, I feel like I'm becoming more of a DC fan, which is odd. Now, I am still hyped for Mark Waid on Daredevil. I'm still hyped for that, but, I am becoming more of a DC fan because I'm kind of tired of the realism in Marvel and how, every hero's against one another. I know it's still like Civil War, it sounds like Civil War stuff, but there are a lot of heroes that just bitch and moan a lot in there. So more or less, I think I'm becoming more like a DC fan than I am a Marvel fan these days. I still like now. Keep in mind, I still like Marvel. I still love Marvel, but I feel like I'm turning more to the DC side, because it feels like they're playing up with more escapism. And I think that's why people are starting to like it more, because I think realism is starting to get really tiring. Like, it's been done to death since Watchmen. So I think that's why people are starting to like. I've been talking to a lot of people, and there are a lot of people who are more. Yeah, I'm more DC than Marvel. So, you know, that's understandable considering that Marvel's kind of beaten the realism horse to death. Well, DC's riding on the escapism horse right out the gate. That's a good analogy, actually. It's not bad of an analogy. So, that's more or less what I'm trying to get at, is that, you know, with DC, here's a good example. Now, I don't really know if this has happened in DC Universe continuity in any era. I'm pretty sure it has, but you could have one character, and he meets another character, and the character that meets, like, I don't know, Green Arrow, basically tells him, I'm your cousin from Dimension X on the third planet Xanar. And, you know, everyone would be cool with that. Everyone would be cool with that because DC doesn't take itself seriously, and I think that's pure escapism right there. I'm pretty sure that happened at one point or another sometime in some comic book in DC, and sometime in the Golden or Silver Age, that comic book and that story was made. I don't know if it was retconned or not, but I'm pretty sure somewhere in some issue that was made. But yeah, I think I've said my piece about this. What do you guys think? Are you guys more for realism, or are you guys more for escapism? Me, I've said my piece. I'm more for escapism. But you guys tell me, which do you guys more prefer on, you know, realism versus escapism and all that jazz?